This is Barry Zalma, Zalma on Insurance. I'm an attorney who has retired from the practice of law and now spend my time as an insurance claims consultant and expert witness, an author and producer of these videos. Today we'll change the subject a bit and talk about testing for mold, because for some reason mold has become a cause célèbre among plaintiffs' lawyers and insurance companies who are called upon to defend cases brought against their insurers for causing injuries by mold, or brought by their insurers for damages to their property caused by mold. There are many testing methods that can detect molds or fungi. Some methods can identify a portion of the types of viable molds, but these may also miss or undercount those that are not viable or will not grow well on the nutrients used to incubate the sample. Even tests that are done well only give a partial estimate of the amount and types of mold actually collected in a sample or in the sampled environment. It is necessary, therefore, to recognize that a test result only gives a snapshot estimate for a single point in time and at a single location. Whether the test result represents other locations and times is uncertain. The amounts and types of mold in the environment change constantly. Airborne molds change significantly over the course of minutes or hours. When interpreting mold testing, caution must be used. Unless many samples are taken over a period of time, and the investigator has been mindful of building operations and activities during the testing, the results might not be accurate. Despite these limitations, there are situations where mold testing by skilled investigators may be valuable, such as when it's necessary to justify remediation expenses to an insurer or to a governmental entity. Experienced investigators should evaluate whether testing is warranted. The ethical mold investigator should advise against testing whenever the problem can be corrected without it. Every property owner, developer, contractor, or investigator must recognize that doing mold testing well is often expensive. Testing that is not needed or that is done poorly is a waste of money. The basic goals of any mold investigation are always to find the locations of mold growth and determine the sources of the moisture, which is a necessary requirement for any mold growth. If these can be answered by simpler or more cost-effective methods, mold testing is probably not a wise use of resources. Testing may be useful if people in the building are at a particular health risk, such as elderly, infant, immune-impaired, asthmatic, or those with a history of respiratory illnesses or other medical complaints which might be caused by or aggravated by mold allergens or other bioaerosols. People in the building are sick, and there is reason to suspect that the building is causing or contributing to health, air quality, or similar concerns. The building has or is suspected of having had a history of significant water leak events, or even a single event which flooded some areas. Plumbing leaks, roof leaks, ice dam leaks, basement water entry, sewer backup, ventilation problems, Air conditioning system problems and forced air central heating or cooling concerns can all lead to the necessity for an inspection. Large areas of water damage or mold contamination have been seen, and the insurer or property owner needs an estimate of the extent of demolition and mold remediation which will be needed to make a proper cleanup and repair. Detection methods include the following. Visual inspection. According to the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene Bureau of Environmental and Occupational Disease epidemiologists, a visual inspection of a potentially mold-infested property should include the following. A visual inspection is the most important initial step in identifying a possible contamination problem. The extent of any water damage and mold growth should be visually assessed. This assessment is important in determining remedial strategies. Ventilation systems should also be visually checked, particularly for damp filters, but also for damp conditions elsewhere in the system and overall cleanliness. The use of equipment such as a boroscope, an inspection device with a rigid or flexible optical tube for insertion into bores and cavities for visualization. The relay tube can be rigid or flexible and is followed by a handpiece containing an eyepiece or direct video optics. Rigid boroscopes are preferred over flexible boroscopes when possible, as they have better image quality at lower cost. When performing a visual inspection, the investigator should look for patches that look fuzzy, cottony, or leathery in appearance, discoloration that can be brown, gray, black, green, yellow, white, or orange in color, a musty or earthy smell, places that are most likely to be damp, places that have leaks, plumbing problems, or flooding, areas around humidifiers and vaporizers where the humidity levels are high and there are great chances of the occurrence of mold infestation, areas with poor ventilation, and problems around the kitchen sink, air ducts, entryways, and refrigerator seals. Sometimes it's necessary to have an expert analysis. The expert will collect samples for laboratory analysis. These may include air samples, bulk surface sampling, dust collection samples, a tape lift sample where a piece of cellophane tape is placed on the surface containing discoloration that is suspected to be mold. A trained mycologist using a microscope in a laboratory can confirm the sample. Wipe or swab samples. Air monitoring. Air sampling for fungi should be part of a routine assessment since decisions about appropriate remediation strategies can usually be made on the basis of a visual inspection. In addition, air sampling methods for some fungi are prone to false negative results and therefore cannot be used to definitively rule out contamination. If air monitoring is performed for comparative purposes, outdoor air samples should be collected concurrently at the air intakes, if possible, and at a location representative of outdoor air. Personnel conducting the sampling must be trained in proper air sampling methods for microbial contaminants. A laboratory specializing in mycology should be consulted for specific sampling and shipping instructions. One of the key requirements of an indoor air quality inspection is to test for both indoor and outdoor air quality to gain neutral base level upon which to compare the indoor levels. Therefore, an inspector or remediator testing for mold must include samples of ambient air indoors and at least 2 outdoor samples. The U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, recommends that in most cases, if visible mold growth is present, sampling is unnecessary. Air sampling for mold may not be a part of a routine assessment because decisions about appropriate remediation strategies often can be made on the basis of visual inspection. The first step in any mold investigation is to inspect for any evidence of water damage and visible mold growth. In many cases, it is not economically practical or useful to test for mold growth on surfaces or for airborne spores in the building. Consultation with an industrial hygienist or other environmental health or safety professional with experience in microbial investigations should be performed before a decision is made that sampling for mold is necessary or even useful, and to identify persons who can conduct any necessary sampling. Sampling results can be used as a guide to determine the extent of an infestation and the effectiveness of the cleanup. Interpretation is best left to the industrial hygienist or other environmental, health, or safety professional. OSHA also expects that sampling for mold should be conducted by professionals with specific experience in designing mold sampling protocols, sampling methods for microbial contaminants, and interpretation of results. Now, once these results are obtained, whether by visual inspection or by sampling, microscopic identification of the spores or colonies must be understood to require considerable expertise. These services are not routinely available from commercial laboratories. Documented quality control in the laboratories used for analysis of the bulk surface and air samples is necessary. The American Industrial Hygiene Association offers accreditation to microbial laboratories. Accredited laboratories must participate in quarterly proficiency testing. Evaluation of bulk surface sampling and air sampling data should be performed by an experienced health professional. The presence of few or trace amounts of fungal spores in bulk surface sampling should be considered background because fungal spores exist almost everywhere in the world. Amounts greater than the presence of fungal fragments may suggest fungal colonization growth or an accumulation at or near the sampled location. Air samples should be evaluated by means of comparison of indoors to outdoors and by fungal type, genera, and species. In general, the levels and types of fungi should be similar indoors in a non-problem building as compared to the outdoor air. Differences in levels or types of fungi found in air samples may indicate that moisture sources and resultant fungal growth may be problematic. This video was adapted from my book, The Mold and Fungi Handbook, which is available as both a Kindle book and as a paperback from Amazon.com. If you found this video to be interesting or useful to you, please forward it to your colleagues, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Rumble channel, as well as to my blog, so that you can learn about future videos and blog postings. Thank you for your attention.